Hello guys, today we'll be talking about the price effect. This is a chapter that confuses a lot of students, so please pay attention. Okay, so the price effect is actually divided into two parts. One is the income effect, the second is substitution effect. Okay, so what is the meaning of price effect? The price effect actually means what happens to the quantity demanded when the price changes. Okay, what happens when the price changes? And in order to understand the price effect, we need to understand the two other effects, which is the income effect and the substitution effect. The income effect means what happens to the quantity demanded when the income changes, and the substitution effect means what happens to the quantity demanded when the good become more expensive or less expensive than other goods. Okay, so before we proceed, we need to know some basics. First of all, when the price of a good changes, the consumer's real income changes. An example will be when the price of good X increases, the consumer's real income actually decreases. Why? Because when the price of goods increases, with your current income you can actually buy less of the good, meaning you are not as rich as before, and the increase in price actually corrodes your buying power, which causes your real income to decrease. Okay, so understand this. Now the second thing is, when the price of a good changes, consumer will look into substitute in other goods. This sentence is not that good. I'll rephrase it. So when the price of a good changes, the consumers will compare okay, the original good with the substitute of the good. Okay, so let's say the price of X increases, right? So when the price of X increases, compared to X, the price of its substitute will be cheaper, right? So this is what I mean by the consumer will compare it with other goods. Okay, so now we've understand these two parts. We'll proceed. Okay, and before you go to the next stage, there's another thing that you need to know. One is what is the effect of normal good. The second one is what is the effect of inferior good. Let's say we consider two cars. One is Honda City and car S. Okay, which is let's give it a name, Proton Saga. Okay, so not pointing any fingers, but Proton Saga, let's assume that Proton Saga is an inferior good and Honda City is a normal good. Okay, so now imagine that now you are very rich. Which car would you prefer? I mean, 90% of you will say it's Honda City. Okay, and that's true. And now if you're very poor, or not to say very poor, if you are poor, but you can still afford two cars, you can still afford Honda City and you can still afford Saga, but you are poor. Okay, so which car would you buy? Same thing, 90% of you will say Proton Saga or car S. Okay, so this is the same thing. This is the thing that we need to understand when it comes to income effect. Okay, when our real income, remember it's real income, increase, what this means is we get richer, we become richer, and when we become richer, we will actually consume more. I mean, we will prefer normal goods, so we'll prefer normal goods, meaning the demand for normal goods will increase. And if we are richer, we don't want inferior goods, meaning the demand for inferior goods will decrease. Okay, so this is the first thing that you need to understand. This is called the income effect. Now, the second thing is on what happens to consumers' demand when a normal good or an inferior good becomes cheaper compared to competitors. Okay, so same thing. Now you have Honda City and Car S. Okay. Now if for example Honda City becomes cheaper compared to other competitors, would you demand more of Honda City? Of course, because same thing. If when it becomes cheaper, let's say there's other cars available like Honda Civic or BMW or even Proton Saga. When it becomes cheaper, the Honda City will become more attractive to you. So of course you prefer Honda City, and the demand will increase. Now, how about inferior good? When Proton Saga becomes cheaper, will you buy Proton Saga more, or will you prefer more of Proton Saga? Yes, I mean the inferior good does not actually affect how much more you prefer Proton Saga when it becomes cheaper. When it's cheap, you prefer it. Understand? So just to summarize, for normal good and inferior good, the first thing you need to understand is the income. So if our real income increases, we'll prefer normal goods to inferior goods, meaning we'll buy more of normal goods and less of inferior good. Now, second thing is when both of the goods, normal and inferior goods, becomes cheaper compared to competitor, we'll prefer them both. Okay. Understand? Okay. Next. Now we'll look into the price effect. So as we mentioned before, the price effect actually tells us what happens when the price of a good changes, what happens to the quantity demanded. So we'll start with normal good. When the price of a normal good increases, okay, when the price of normal good X increases, our real income will decrease. And remember, when we say our real income decrease, when our real income decrease, we will prefer to buy inferior good rather than normal goods, which means our demand for the normal good X will also decrease. Okay? Next, when the price of X increases, X actually becomes more expensive compared to other goods. Okay? When X becomes more expensive, we will demand less of X, right? Understand? So the first part here is what we call the income effect. The second part here is what we call the substitution effect. Okay? Now, if you can see here, when the price of X increases, the demand of X decreases due to the income effect, meaning there is a negative relationship. When one increase, one decrease. Okay, and as for the substitution effect, same thing happens. When the price of X increases, demand for X decreases, meaning you have a negative substitution effect. So for a normal good, we have a negative substitution effect, negative income effect, and a negative substitution effect. Meaning, when the price changes, the two effects act at the same direction. When when the price of X increases, the income effect causes the demand to decrease. The substitution effect causes the demand to decrease also. So in this case, we say that the income effect and the substitution effect reinforce each other. Okay? Understand? So when the income and substitution effect reinforce each other, we say that when the price of X increases, the demand of X decreases also. Understand? Okay. Next, we'll talk about inferior good. So normally, this is where it starts to get confusing. Okay. So same thing. For an inferior good, we look at it individually. Let's say we are talking about inferior good Y. Okay, so what happens when the price of Y increases? Remember, when the price of good increases, your real income actually decreases. Your real income decreases, which causes you to be less rich, to be more poor. So when you're poor, you prefer inferior good to normal good, right? And since Y is an inferior good, the demand for Y will increase because you get poor. Okay, now the next part. When the price of an inferior good increases, it becomes more expensive compared to other goods. More expensive compared to other goods. And when the price increases, it gets expensive, so you demand less of Y. Understand? Now, same thing, now we'll look into the income and substitution effect. So this is the income effect, this is the substitution effect. For the income effect, you'll see that when the price of Y increases, the demand for Y increases. We call this a positive income effect, because they act at the same direction. When one increases, the other increase. However, as for the substitution effect, when the price of Y increases, the demand for Y decreases. Okay, they act at the opposite direction, so we call this a negative income effect. Okay, a negative income effect. So this is different to the case previously, because in the scenario of the normal good, both the income and the substitution effect are all negative. But for this case, the income effect is positive and the substitution effect is negative. So now you need to know that because they contradict each other, the effects contradict each other. This is what we call as the effect contradicts each other, because they act in the different direction. This is very important. They contradict each other. So when they contradict each other, how can we know that when the price increases, will the demand increase or decrease? Okay, so now I'll show you. Now, there's two cases. First is when the income effect is larger than the substitution effect, or we say the income, the keyword here is outweighs, outweighs, outweighs the substitution effect. And when the income effect outweighs the substitution effect, meaning if you can see here, the income effect causes the demand to increase and the substitution effect causes the demand to decrease. So when the income effect outweighs the substitution effect, we say that the demand of Y increases more than it decreases. So when the price of Y increases, the demand for Y increases also. We call this good an inferior good. However, the second case is when the substitution effect outweighs the income effect. The substitution effect outweighs, again, the keyword here is outweighs the income effect. So when the substitution effect outweighs the income effect, we say that the good decreases, the demand for Y decreases more than it increases. What happens here is when the price of Y increases, the demand for Y decreases. Okay? Now, this is where it gets tricky. We know that the good that we are considering is, first of all, is inferior. But if we consider the effect of the price on the good, it actually acts the same as a normal good. This is a strange scenario, and we actually give it a name. I mean, this is a real name, not that we give it. They actually, the economists actually give it a name. We call this type of good given good. Given good is an inferior good, but it acts like a normal good. Okay, so I'll just give you an example of given good. Now let's say now it's you can actually search for given good online for more information, but I'll just give you a very simple example. Let's say now it's wartime. It's wartime. Let's say it's now World War One. And one example of given good is potato. Okay, during wartime, what economists realize is that although potato is an inferior good compared to rice, okay, but when the war happens, the price of potato increases. However, being an inferior good, the quantity demanded still increase. Okay, so this is one example of given good, a very simple example. So if you want to know more, you can search online for more information about given good. Okay, so that concludes the lesson on price effect, income effect, and substitution effect. Thank you.